Welcome to 2022 and welcome to another episode of Encounter, Grow, Witness, a podcast from the Archdiocese of Detroit with the Unleash the Gospel movement, where we seek to serve and assist our brothers and sisters in ministry and helping them know the joy of the gospel and share the joy of the gospel as radical disciples of Jesus Christ in their lives and in their work. And here with the wonderful, the awesome Beth Spazzarni. Beth, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you doing? Outstanding, Father Steve Phyllis.
I
got the adjective in again.
Yeah, I'm doing great. I'm doing great. I'm ready for a wonderful year that God is going to pour grace upon us in 2022. Yeah. And we are blessed to have an awesome, sweet, cool guest with us, Nicole Joyce. Nicole, welcome.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's great to have you. And I can't wait to kind of learn a little bit about how God's working in your life and what you're doing. And, you know, our conversation today, Beth, we were talking about how we can find a good work-life balance, help people kind of understand that. A great goal for the new year, a great goal for, all those who work in ministry seeking, okay, how can I be generous with my work? How can I be a man or woman of prayer? And then how can I also, take care of my primary responsibility of my family. Yep. And Nicole's going to be a great guide for us to have that conversation with.
Yes, thank you for coming in.
I'm going to try. I'm going to do my best.
Yeah, well, you're going to do great. But before we do that, I thought kind of 2022, I thought it'd be fun to look back 20 years, do a little trivia about what was going on 20 years ago in 2002. Normally when Beth is kind of leading this conversation, she likes to embarrass me by knowing none of the answers.
It's a good time. What was it about dogs? I interviewed
I know
about
nothing
dogs.
About
he
dogs.
He didn't know anything about dogs. He doesn't like dogs.
Okay, we don't need to
But
continue
he said he's not
that.
a serial killer, so
not
I wanted
a dog
to make sure
person,
he wasn't.
I see.
So I quizzed him about popular dogs. He did all right. He missed all the little ones.
Is it fear of dogs or is it?
I mean, I was chased by a dog as a child.
That could be it. Yeah.
I'm kidding.
The mothers here, we've cracked the case.
We know how this works.
Should I lay down on the couch for this conversation?
Maybe.
Maybe. Wow. I didn't realize bringing Nicole in would lead to a tag team on me. But it's my turn now to ask you two some questions about 2002, and we can do time travel.
Yeah.
Sound effects, whatever. Ron can do time travel sound effects there. All right. Who was president in 2002?
It was George W. Bush, but I also saw his screen before he turned it, so I got the first one.
You wouldn't have known that?
I probably would have.
I was trying to figure. I was like, was it W? But yes, you are correct. Yeah, that's right.
And it's pronounced W.
W.
Yeah, not W.
W. Yes, it was W. Okay.
The Winter Olympics were held in 2002.
Oh,
where were the Winter Olympics held?
Oh, I don't think I could guess.
Did
Winter
you cheat?
I didn't cheat. Okay. No, I didn't see any other answers, unfortunately.
They were held in the United States.
Oh, Utah. Were they in Utah?
Any city in Utah?
Not Salt Lake City.
Salt Lake
It was
City.
Salt Lake City.
All right.
That might be the only city I know in Utah.
1-1.
I'm just saying.
Wow.
Yeah.
Nice.
Utah's a great state. Other than Michigan, Utah might be my favorite.
Yeah,
state.
you vacationed there one time, right?
I went there once. I've been there twice. I flew through there and spent kind of a overnight there. And I love Utah. It's so beautiful.
Nice. I haven't been.
Yeah, it's awesome. The World Cup took place in 2002.
Boy.
Where was it held? Nicole
I was studying so hard
Joyce.
In college. I don't think
What country, Nicole Joyce, would the World Cup have been held?
Were they in Europe?
They were not.
Ooh, I got
Much
nothing.
farther east.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, were they in Korea in 2002?
They were.
I should know this.
Which city in Korea?
They had to have been in Seoul.
Yeah, not Pyongyang.
Not
in
no,
North
that's
Korea.
North Korea.
Yeah, in South Korea.
Thank you for clarifying that they were not in North Korea. Yes, that's.
World Youth Day took place in 2002. Where was World Youth Day in 2002?
Toronto.
Toronto,
oh,
yeah. Did you go?
I did not go. It was in my more Protestant days. So
I was going to
I was too good for that, which is really too bad.
You weren't going to a big Eucharistic celebration with the Pope?
I was not ready for that. Not
and praying the rosary together?
I wasn't ready. No, not in 2002.
Okay.
Nicole, did you go to Toronto?
I did not. I was a junior in college then, so I think I was probably student teaching. So
okay.
no.
Nice.
Okay, great. That's the only World Youth Day I've been to.
You were there.
It's the
Really?
closest, it was my brother, some of my cousins. We kind of road tripped up there, had a great time.
Nice.
Yeah. The number one song at the beginning of the year and the number one song at the end of the year.
Ooh.
Beginning of the year was by Nickelback.
Oh, was it Hero?
No, it was the song "How You Remind Me."
Oh, I forgot about that one.
You know, that like Nickelbacky voice.
I think I'll remember.
That sounded way too much like Elvis and not like Nickelback.
No, there's a lot of overlap between Nickelback and Elvis. You know?
It feels like a stretch.
In the deeper corners of the internet, you can find a lot about that.
I'm kind of afraid to Google that, so I'm going to pass.
And at the end of 2002, by a local Detroit artist named Eminem.
It wasn't the real Slim Shady.
No. It was Lose Yourself.
Oh, I love that song. That was a good one. Oh, that's right, because 8 Mile came out, right?
Yep.
Okay, so I was student teaching. So I was student teaching in a little high school in Sparta, Michigan. If there's anyone here in West Michigan, it's apple country, apple farmer country.
Okay.
And 8 Mile had just come out, and the kids were like, oh, other fun fact, because of George W. being president.
George W.
George W. being president, my maiden name was Wallagora.
Okay.
So my students called me Miss Dub. Nice. And they were like, Miss Dub, you're from Detroit? Oh my gosh. Do you live near 8 Mile? And I was like, guys, Detroit is so big. So no, I don't live near 8 Mile. They're like, have you ever met Eminem? I was like, no, I don't like see him at the grocery store.
Right.
We're not friends. Like, you know. So,
Yeah.
Yes, I forgot about that whole blow up of like rap music and having a battle. And, oh yeah. That was good times.
Did you see 8 Mile?
No. No.
I remember going to the theater to see it.
No.
Yeah. Eminem's super talented.
He is. Yeah. He is really talented. Yeah. He has a gift for sure.
A couple more pop culture questions here. What won Best Picture in 2002? It was a movie with Russell Crowe.
Ooh, was it Gladiator?
No. It was the one where he is kind of I think schizophrenia.
Oh, was he a boxer in that one?
No, that's Cinderella Man.
Yeah, I was thinking of Cinderella Man.
But this is A Beautiful
Mind.
Beautiful Mind.
Yes, that was a good one.
Yeah, I think that was good, but I haven't seen it in so long. So, what children's show celebrated its 4,000th episode in 2002?
Sesame Street.
Had to be Sesame Street.
Do you know the song?
I don't
Sesame
know the
Street?
song.
You just don't want to sing it.
I don't know. No, I'm going to go with I don't know.
How to get
I was going to go all the way back.
Get to
because they start with sunny day.
That's right. Oh, shoot. Start at the beginning. That's right.
Clouds away. Oh,
Ron, we got our new intro music. Nicole singing. Number one comedy in 2002.
Ooh.
A show I never watched. Don't know hardly anything about.
Friends.
Okay.
Was Friends still on in 2002?
I think so.
That's what the internet said.
Yeah.
You never watched Friends?
Nope. I don't
Not
think I've ever
once,
seen an
ever.
episode.
There's
I've seen like clips and
Can
bits
you name
and
some
whatever.
characters on the show?
Yeah.
Who is on the
show? Ross. There's a guy named Ross.
Okay.
And then Rachel.
Okay.
Yep. Jennifer Aniston.
All of that from never having seen an episode.
I mean, it's kind of like
kind
the
of pervasive.
ethos of the culture.
Yeah, it's pervasive. Yeah.
Were you a Friends?
Yes, I remember watching Rachel and Ross get together like my senior year of high school. So that was like 99, 2000.
Wow.
Yeah.
Kids.
Kids.
And number one drama of 2002.
Ooh, ER. No, Grey's Anatomy.
No.
Ooh, shoot. It had to be a medical
political.
thing, was it? Oh, it was political.
drama.
West Wing?
West Wing.
My
Must have
mom
been the
loved
end of
that
West
show.
Wing. Because I think of West Wing is a little bit earlier, but
Yeah.
must have been towards the end of West Wing.
Yeah, my mom loved that show.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was all about it.
Yeah. Have you seen West Wing?
Yeah, my mom was obsessed too.
Yeah.
I've seen a few episodes of it. I've liked it, but I haven't kind of like gone into the vault and
Yeah.
and
I don't know if
kinda
they made
tried
shows
to
back
see it.
then to make people binge watch them.
Yeah.
You know?
I could see you being into that more than I would personally. I'm not a big into politics. It's like not my favorite thing. So,
Yeah.
But I could see you wanting to get into that kind of
Yeah. I was studying political science and
Yeah.
was involved in those things at
Yeah,
that time.
yeah.
So. Yeah. Well, there we go. 2002. Let's fast forward back to the present. Okay. Anyway, welcome to 2022, and here we're talking about work-life balance with Nicole. So
Yeah. One of the questions we love to ask people just to start off is, what does your prayer life look like?
So I am an on-the-go mom, as you would say, right? I have 4 kids at home and I work full-time. And so my prayer life is very active. it's an ongoing experience, really. And so the first thing is morning offering, first thing in the morning, prayer with my kids before we go to school. And then because I work for the Archdiocese, we pray before every meeting, right? So there's a lot of prayer because there's a lot of meetings.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I do try to make every one of those authentic in some way, right? Like I try to make sure that I'm remembering what I want to keep in prayer that day in every single one of those prayers as the meetings start, whether it's, 10 seconds, 30 seconds, whatever it is. Yeah. And then in the evenings, my family and we've learned that the most effective way to get our kids involved in intercessory prayer is to do it before dinner. Because everyone's very focused when there's food on your plate and you can't eat it yet.
Right.
So we serve dinner and we all sit together and then everyone offers their intentions. If we have like a reflection book, like during Advent or Lent or something specific that we're praying for, we bring that up too and everyone prays together there. And then of course at bedtime, there's bedtime prayer with the kids and then my husband and I pray together as well. So it's really a throughout the day experience. Beautiful. The one I like the most is that we get this calendar from church with all the priests in the Archdiocese in it. And it gives us like 2 or 3 per day all through the year. And it just cycles through alphabetically. And so after we say grace, we always ask the Lord to bless whoever the priest is on that day on the calendar. And my kids super love it when Father Steve Polis pops up because I don't know if you are aware, but his nickname at our house is Father Big Cheese.
Come on.
So they love it.
No, it's not a great nickname.
They love
moving
it.
on.
That's sweet.
Are there any priests you cross out? You're like,
no, of course not. And sometimes, like other priests we know who are not in Detroit, they make the list too, like some for the Diocese of Lansing or Marquette or wherever. Yeah. If we know someone's sick, we'll make sure we throw in that priest if we heard something or got something in parish mail. So it's a really nice way for us to kind of come together at the end of the day and say, like, this is an important time as a family for us to share this time together. But before we do that and enjoy the food that we're thankful for, like, let's remember the other people who we want to be praying for. So that to me is like my most centering prayer of the day is when we're all together and we get to pray together.
Yeah.
That's really beautiful.
Yeah, that is great, especially talking about, the balance between work and prayer and work and family, that like finding a way to integrate prayer with family, I love how you talk about praying with your kids, but also like you and your husband taking time to pray as well, that those are 2 very good goods, but they're different, right?
Yeah,
I'm sure your prayer,
absolutely.
you and your husband, is very different than the kids looking at their food, just waiting to eat. But like, nope, we're going to pray together.
Right, I'm sure.
So tell us a little bit about how, like, what you've done in the church. I know you've worked for the Archdiocese a while. What you do there? Have you done other work in the church before that?
Yeah, so let's see. My work in the church started all the way back in youth ministry as a part of the leadership team for my own youth group when I was in high school.
What parish?
St. Vincent Fair in Madison Heights.
Nice.
I grew up in that parish. I went to school there for a little while too.
Okay.
And after I graduated from high school, I did all my volunteering there too. So I was a lector and used to help out with the Vacation Bible School there as well. That was always really fun.
Yeah.
And then I started working for the Archdiocese. Well, actually, we'll back up a little bit. So when my oldest son was little, so this had to be 12, 13 years ago, I started volunteering at the parish again with Family Life Ministry.
Okay.
So that was kind of a very new idea at the time, and it really is still very
What
new.
is Family Life?
I mean,
Ministry?
family ministry, really, when you think about it, is pretty new for a lot of people. I mean, your listeners are probably still like, I don't even know what that is yet. They're supposed to be this director. What is this?
But because we're good church workers, we
so we
head
are
like,
good. We're like, that sounds
family,
good.
It's really important.
So,
I don't know what that is, but it's really important.
So in my day, in the early 2000s, when W was still president, I was a volunteer family life coordinator, and really what I did was I came to like the Education Commission meetings with the Director of Religious Education, and we talked about like what are we doing as a church to encourage vocations in our families, what are we doing to build fellowship and community among our families at the parishes, and what are we doing to make the church feel more welcoming to these little domestic churches. And I that was my battleground for a long time because I was dragging all these toddlers to church and felt like it was hard to feel comfortable at Mass with all these squirmy children and feel like you were welcome there. So I did that as a volunteer for a while until I started working at the Archdiocese the first time in 2012 in the Safe Environments office.
Nice.
So I was scheduling all those Protecting God's Children workshops you
Right.
guys love,
Right.
and Called to Serve and all those things. And then when my daughter was born, she was my 4th baby.
Wow.
And my mom was like, I love you, but I don't want to watch all 4 of your kids, right? So I had recently completed training to teach natural family planning. And so I came home and started working from home as an NFP teacher, so serving the church in a totally different capacity from before. And I just loved that work. It was great. I taught from home for 6 years, almost 7,
Wow.
while my husband was working. And then when, actually, it was right around the time I came in and recorded Open Door Policy with you, Father Steve, that I heard the NFP coordinator at the Archdiocese was leaving, and she had called me up and said, I really think you would be great for this. You should pray about it and think about it. And of course I was like, that sounds terrible. Like, that's so much work, and I have all these kids in my house. And but we took it to prayer. We prayed about it for like a full month and a half, and just really felt like the Lord was calling me to do that. And I'm so glad I did, because since then I've been kind of drawn into helping with all these other ministries, including family ministry. So now that's where I live. I live in the Office of Family Ministry and Engagement, and I work full time now, which is a totally different transition.
Wow.
Oh, you're full-time
I
now.
am, yeah.
Wow.
That started the end of October.
Oh, wow. Really recent. Oh, this
Yes,
is a perfect
it's
topic
very,
for you.
It's very
Oh,
recent,
great.
yes. So,
Okay.
so now I work in engagement and family ministry, and I coordinate natural family planning still, but I also work as the coordinator of family support ministry, which is new.
Yeah.
So, we always talk about, like, who are your constituents?
Yeah.
I don't have constituents yet because those roles haven't been filled yet.
Oh,
but
right.
eventually
That's
I
true.
will. Don't worry. We'll get there.
Constituents, like who in the parishes do we serve?
Yes,
right?
who in the parishes am I working with? Who's emailing and calling me, and who am I going out to meet and assist in their ministry too, right?
That's so beautiful. Nicole, I think you and I had touched base or kind of connected by phone a few times about theology of the body things, and how can we help our families and our young people and our big people understand kind of the church's teachings as good. And I remember you and I had connected a few times over the phone, and then we had set up a Zoom, and it was right in the middle of COVID lockdown.
Yes.
And so we were all at home, and I just remember I was so touched because you were engaging, and you were so professional, and you had so much wisdom to share. And then popping in the background were just little people.
Yes.
And I just thought, like, this is just beautiful. Like, this is life. This is what church ministry and life looks like, right? Because my kids were doing the same thing,
Yes.
So I appreciate your witness of the beauty and the connectedness of work and family, right?
Thank
and how,
you.
like, I imagine that a lot of the beauty and goodness that you bring into your professional roles comes from the fruit that God is bringing in your family life. So I think that's
thank
really
you.
awesome.
I'm so touched to hear that, because sometimes I wonder, like, how many of these people think, wow, this lady is so unprofessional to have this 7-year-old hanging off the back of her chair while she's trying to talk to you?
No, it's awesome. It's awesome, right?
Yes,
I
thank
think
you.
it's awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And just before we started recording, we were talking about, some help you do here at the seminary with the seminarians and how fruitful they find it. The real life example you give, the couples that you bring in who are living this in, not this kind of picturesque, perfect way,
Right.
but in a way how do I incorporate the beauty of the church's teaching about sexuality, marriage, and, the goodness of relationships in the concrete circumstances of life, which are not always neat and tidy.
Yeah,
Right.
I think that's really where
Right.
family ministry takes root. It's where the theology that we believe as a church meets real life, right? It's where the family is living that truth. And so family ministry has always been near and dear to me.
Yeah.
And coming into this new position and really, like, being able to focus on it with families of parishes has been really, really wonderful and really exciting for me. And I can't wait to see what's in store with that.
Yeah. Well,
That's really exciting.
Having worked for the church in different capacities and different ways, right? Officially for the Archdiocese, working at your parish and doing NFP stuff from home. What has been a grace? Like, how has that helped your spiritual life or your family life? I mean, there's lots of ways that can be a challenge, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But, it's not meant to be just kind of draining from us. It's also meant to be a grace, a help to our spiritual life or family life. Any ways for you that you've seen that kind of help you as a mom, a wife, a disciple of the Lord?
Yeah, absolutely. So on kind of like an individual level, the one thing that I've taken away in all these years of really, like, interacting with different families under different circumstances is a really deep sense of gratitude. an appreciation for the things we do have, and also for the things that we don't have, right? Like my husband and I went through a really difficult time where he was underemployed or unemployed, and we ourselves were reaching out to the church and asking for assistance with, basic human needs even. And so seeing people who are willing to come to the church and seeing people at the church who are willing to help them and how the church can come together as a human family and support each other is just such a beautiful experience, to be on both ends of that, to be on the giving end and the receiving end, and then to consistently be able to reflect back on that and experience a sense of gratitude for the gifts that we have in each other and for, the material gifts that we're able to provide for each other too, has really been a beautiful experience for my whole family.
I know I've really appreciated your insights. I know you've worked in retail before. And I think your husband's worked in that area too. And I know when we were working together at the Archdiocese, you were bringing up just making sure that the programming we offer or the support we offer doesn't fall into kind of a certain socioeconomic group where we're only helping, this group of people.
Yes, that's my battlefield. Father Steve knows well.
Yeah, no, but it's beautiful. And I think it's really good because, we can get caught up in one mindset, and to make sure that, as you talk about family ministry, we're really helping all different kinds of families in the concrete circumstances of their life, and what we're offering can be applied to people in the outer ring suburbs and rural places, as well as the inner ring suburbs in the city of Detroit.
Yeah. I think it's so important that we look beyond what we think is the general norm. And sometimes when we work in a parish, we get so absorbed in our parish community, right? Like we know everybody knows us, and we know what time mass is, and we know who sits where in the pew. Like I can close my eyes and imagine who sits where, right? Oh, there's the Joyce family, they're third row back, all the way on the right. Like everybody knows that's where we sit. So sometimes it's hard to think outside of that experience and think that there are people who are struggling with something completely different, right? Or the people who aren't ever at mass, and it's like, but why? Have we thought about that? Or the people who are sporadically there? So really thinking beyond our normative experience of being there and saying, what else is there beyond the pews? That who else is there beyond the pews, and what are we doing to try and serve them and bring them closer?
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, that's awesome. We talked a little bit about, family life and work life and balancing those. What does overworking look like? Like what impact can that have in our own lives and our ministries? What are your thoughts on that? I know a lot of our lay ministers struggle with that.
Yeah.
That they're not working enough.
That's often not.
Yes.
that it can take over your life if you let it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm sure your listeners all know that ministry burnout is real. Yeah. And we've lost some really great lay ministers in the past to this. I mean, we've lost some ordained ministers in the past too to burnout. Yeah. So I think one of the things that we should always be aware of consistently is like, are we praying? That has to be first and foremost. Amen. Because if we're praying and we're taking time for that quiet to listen to what the Lord has to say to us, He's going to guide us. He's going to let us know, you're pushing too hard. You're doing too much. This is too far, right? Like if you're really remaining docile to the Holy Spirit the way the Archbishop asks us to and unleash the gospel, then you'll hear Him tell you, this is too much, or this is not the right time for this, or whatever it is. So it has to start there, and that's so important. We can't just do the work. We have to pray first. Everything has to start there. And you'll know that you're doing too much or you're going in the wrong direction when you realize you haven't been praying. Right? Like that's sign number one.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I know Beth and I have talked about this, I feel like a bunch of times. Maybe just in my head it's happened more. But the way we can lose sight of the work we do for the church is meant to bless us too. We're not just meant to be this mop that gets used to kind of like, kind of
not just a mop.
Or kind of I think of a pencil that we're just kind of like used until it's done. You just write with it, and then the goal of the pencil is just to do the work. Like Christ doesn't call us slaves. He doesn't call us instruments. He calls us friends and co-workers, cooperators with His grace. And so the work we do is meant to be maybe not first, but not incidental for us too. And so I think, when you talk about prayer, losing sight of being a man or woman of prayer loses sight of the fact that, doing family ministry, doing religious education, doing youth ministry, doing pastoral ministry is meant to kind of help me grow as a disciple of the Lord as well, not just kind of I'm the instrument that God needs to use here and now.
Yeah, like you are a part of your own ministry, right? So if your family life is not flourishing, then the whole of your ministry is not flourishing.
Right.
That matters. And I think oftentimes people, I think you're right though, Nicole, I think it's when we stop praying, right? It's like we turn off the warning system.
Yeah,
we
don't
turn
hear
off the
it.
warning system and then we're left with our own devices. So if left to our own devices with this big mission that needs to be done, then we don't know when we need to stop, and we're also not discerning what good really needs to be done. We're just doing what we think needs to be done, which is that's not good, right? It should be directed by the Lord and guided by Him. So,
and it just becomes a burden, right? It's like in Exodus where Pharaoh says more bricks and no straw. Like everything just feels like a burden then, that like I have to do this. It's a burden. I have to accomplish this. I know, you and I have talked about this a lot, Beth, and this can happen for everyone in ministry where you lose sight of like, Jesus wants me to fall more deeply in love with him. Yeah. And for priests, that can be a huge challenge too, right? Because there's so much pastoral work to be done. But to remember, like, the Lord wants an intimate relationship with me. And he wants that with all of our lay ecclesial ministers, all of our mission direct people in parishes as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
So we've talked about, like, the way it's been a blessing. What's been a challenge? Like how do you... because we want this to be helpful for people, and in order for it to be helpful, for this conversation to be helpful for us and for others, we also have to look at like where the challenges come in. I think about for myself, some of those challenges can be that the work of mission can just feel a lot. Like the need is great. Our Lord says, the harvest is great and the laborers are few. And that can feel like, well, get cracking, right? Like there's a lot of work. Get off the couch and get going. Right. And there's a bit of that where he's saying that. But again, like leaning into the relationship piece. But what has been a challenge for you, either in that balance or in your own spiritual life with that work?
So 2 things come to mind. One is that it can be really hard to say no when someone at your parish asks you to take on something new or asks you to help out in an area where you're not usually working, because you just, I'm sure a lot of your listeners have experienced that. They're like, yeah, I could do that. It's like, yes, you could do that. But are you, number one, are you the right person to do it? Have you prayed about that? And number 2, do you need to be doing that? Or is there someone else who could do that, who maybe is really waiting for the right thing to come along? So really thinking like, am I the right person to be filling that role, and being able to say no if you prayerfully discern that that's not where you're supposed to be. So I think that's really hard for a lot of people, because ministers are naturally drawn to wanting to minister. So we're people. So saying no is really hard. And then I think what kind of directly follows from that is the guilt we feel sometimes after we say no, right? We're like, no, I'm really sorry. I can't teach 7th grade faith formation because my son has basketball that night. Like, it's really important to him that I be at his game or whatever it is, and then people are just like, oh, Nicole said no because she has to go to basketball, and then you're just feeling super guilty about it. Like, oh, did I put basketball before Jesus? Like, right? You start to think like, did I make the right decision? So like really knowing where your boundary is and then being able to follow through with that, and then being able to confidently say, because you prayed and because you knew that that wasn't where you were supposed to be, to confidently say that you made that decision because that's where you're supposed to be, can be really, really hard for a lot of people. Yeah.
I think in ministry, especially because we experience that, how hard it is to say no. I always try to be so gracious when people say no to me, like I really want to, I'm not an arm twister. I'm not a manipulator. And so one of the things that I have a hard time with is encouraging people to discern if it's the right fit, because I also don't want, I'm so sensitive.
You don't want to be the one forcing everyone else to say yes.
Yeah, I met a woman who, she was the coordinator. She's amazing. She's been the coordinator of perpetual adoration at Shrine for like decades, right? She's amazing.
Yeah.
And so we interviewed her. We wanted to share her story. And I was like, so how did you get started? Like, how did you take on this role? And I was expecting to hear, well, I don't know what I was expecting, but maybe like, oh, like I had this profound experience. And she said, no, I got a letter in the mail from the Monsignor at the time saying, I understand you're going to be the new coordinator of perpetual adoration at the shrine. She's like, I have no context for this. I don't know. We've never had a conversation. No one has mentioned this to me.
And now 20 years later.
20 years later, she's still doing it.
Yes. And so I'm just so sensitive that like as church, we've done that, right? And especially like, I mean, you know, the work has to be done, and I know our priests are overloaded, and so sometimes our priests do that, and sometimes our staff do that, right, where we kind of do an arm twist and a manipulation. So I'm so sensitive to not wanting to do that, and so, but I also want to help people discern, you know, because sometimes people say no because they just don't know if they'd be good at it, or they're nervous, or you know, I want to make sure like if you would say yes to this, I would equip you and accompany you. Like it would be my responsibility to make sure you succeed in this role. But on the other hand, I'm so sensitive that like I don't want people to feel that burden. You know, as though like I think sometimes we as we are eaten up in the fields of ministry, so we eat up our volunteers.
Yeah,
you
absolutely.
know,
And then
like,
you get volunteer burnout, which is just as bad.
Yeah, or we make them feel bad for not being able to do this one more thing, right? So, gosh, it's so important to be able to say no's and yeses and respect each other's no's and yeses.
Yeah.
I think that's really profound.
And to pray before we even ask, right? Like if we know, if we see someone and we're like, that guy would be so good at this one thing, I got to pray about it first. I cannot just blurt that out in conversation and ask him to do it. Like I have to pray first.
That's good.
Before I even sit down with him, right? And then I have to not let him say yes right away, right? I have to say, I want you to pray about it. Like give me a call, send me a text, whatever it is next week. Like let's talk about it some more when you're ready. Like we can't always be ready to fire. Like, okay, let's go. It's gotta be intentional. And sometimes it's so slow. And I know people don't like that. The church already moves slow as it is. But sometimes it has to be intentionally slowed down so that we have that time to discern and remain docile to the Holy Spirit.
Absolutely. Yeah. So true.
Yeah, I might be a little quicker to ask than the two of you.
Yes, we know that already.
But I do think it's important, you know, as you said, to be gracious, I think is the word you used. You know, when as a priest, sometimes, you know, you feel inspired, or I think everyone feels this. Like, I feel like this person would be good at this, or feel like they're looking for a way. Maybe they don't know they're looking for a way, but like they're growing in their faith, and now there needs to be a bit of a switch from being a consumer to now being part of the how can I help grow the faith. So, you know, I do think there can be a way to be a little bold in that, but to be bold in, I see this in you. Yeah. I want to affirm all these good things in you, and this is an area where I think you can help. But also with the freedom of, I'm not trying to guilt you into this, you know? I'm not trying to push you into it, but it's not this kind of neutral, like, you know, hey, do whatever you want, you know? Like, I don't know. In my own mind, I do try to balance the idea of, hey, this is a need in the church, and I see gifts in you. Absolutely. And I really want you to think about this, because I do think this isn't just like me trying to fill a role.
Yeah,
right?
That's huge, right? So, it's not just a warm body. Or the nearest person. Right. I mean, we've all seen people be asked because they were the nearest physical person. Right? Not because they had the gifting or the time.
Or because they're the one who doesn't say no, right? I know if I ask other people, that can be really complicated, but if I ask this person,
you'll say yes.
I know they'll say yes. So in my own thought, there's a bit of the balance between, okay, I don't want to pressure anyone. I don't want to kind of pour hot coals of, you know, expectation, and they're going to disappoint me or disappoint the church if they don't say yes. But also, you know, that like, I want to give you a gentle nudge, nudge that like, there's something really good here, and I see these gifts, and this is how I see those gifts could be used. But you need to cooperate with that too if you want to do it.
Yeah. So having been on the receiving end of one of Father Steve's gentle nudges,
it doesn't feel so gentle.
On multiple occasions. I think we're saying the same thing, Father Steve. I think your sense of it might feel different to you because that's just your personality style. That's your, management style, if you will. If we took Myers-Briggs or
Okay.
CLI or whatever, Good Shepherds, Good Leaders, keep naming them. I think that's just the way you exercise that in a different way. Where Beth or I might come about it a little bit differently, just because our personalities and the way we interact with our other ministers is a little bit different. But I think we're all saying the same thing. I totally agree. Because I've never felt like totally pressured by you coming to me and being like, "Hey, Nicole, I want you to do this," right? Like it doesn't feel pressured. And I have said no before, so it's not.
Oh, I know. I know. I remember. No, I'm kidding.
I think we're saying the same thing. Yeah.
For me, it does come full circle because it's not just that I have to ask in this prayerful way and also be bold, but sometimes it's hard for me to ask because I know that I'm already doing more than I should. Mm-hmm. So when other people are like gratefully like when they give me their discerned no, there is a moment where I have to go back to the Lord and go back to detachment. And because otherwise I can get the impression like, it must be so nice to be able to say no to things. That must be so nice for you because I don't get to say no.
So you have that little twinge of jealousy for a second where you're kind of like,
a moment where I have to come back to surrender, right? I have to come back to surrender and come back to the beginning of this whole conversation about overworking and burnout and go back to the Lord and say, okay, so here's my limited capacity. Here's what I can do, and here's there's only so much of it. Yeah. And recognize that the Lord's not asking me to do more either, There's the litany of trust that I know you're such a fan of, Father Steve.
Oh, yes.
From the fear of being asked to give more than I have. Deliver me, Jesus, right? It's important. For me anyway, it's been helpful. Not for Father Steve. He doesn't
He's not loving this. He's not loving this right now.
No. So, I was just thinking, recently I was seeing a guy I know, ran into him somewhere, and I feel like men's ministry is just an area that can grow really in the Archdiocese, and there's a lot of men who are disaffiliated. Yeah. I think we see this culturally too, right? There's this whole study that came out a few months ago about the number of men who have good friendships. Like most men say their best friend are their wives, is their wife. And it's not a bad thing, but most wives say their best friend is like another female friend, right? Yeah. So it's like there's this clear disparity between women are better at making friends and building kind of the network we need for a fulfilled life and the support you just need in life. And men often struggle with that. And so, thinking about how do we help men kind of engage in a relationship, a friendship that's going to help them grow as disciples, right? Yeah. And oftentimes that works with other men. There's other men who kind of sharpen each other and push each other and challenge each other. This is a long way to say I ran into, a friend of mine and just kind of shared with him. I was like, hey, we need to do a men's conference again. And I think you're the one who needs to kind of help me do this. And he was like, what? It's like, that's a lot. I was like, I know. Pray about it. Think about it. But I feel confident you're the guy.
Oh my gosh,
who needs to help with
that
this.
So much.
And so he was, I think he was a little taken aback. I was like, we'll talk. Wow. But I see the gifts. I see it in you. And this is a need. And it's just getting back to the idea of, work-life balance. Oftentimes with our ministry, we have to, I think what's important is to say, what's the most important thing we need to do? Not here are a number of good things we can do, or not here's more work we need to do, but what's most important right now? Yeah. And let's focus on that. Yeah. What do we need to be strategic and clear and committed to doing? And that inevitably means we have to say no to a number of others.
Yeah, you got to prioritize, right?
Yeah. Yeah, if you say yes to everything, you're saying no to whatever the first thing was. Right. that you had said yes to.
Yeah, it's stuff gets pushed off. And so you're saying no to the same amount of things, you're just doing it in a less strategic way.
Yeah. Very true.
Nicole, I know you have a hard out, to use podcast terminology or meeting terminology, in a few minutes. So in the last few minutes with you, I don't know if Beth has more.
I'd love to ask. I know, so your official title, I think, forgive me if I'm wrong, is the Coordinator of Natural Family Planning and Family Support. Yeah?
Yes, that's correct, yeah.
But I've seen a lot of the things that fall under that and that you've taken on kind of being towards helping us, both staff and people as lay ministers, and people in our ministry, in our churches, experience the church's teachings, especially in the area of sexuality, as good news. Yeah. Do you have any words or inspiration or thoughts on how, either as staff and leaders of different ministries, we can do that better, both discovering it as good news ourselves and sharing it as good news?
Yeah, absolutely.
To others.
So holistic sexuality education is part of the expanded vision for natural family planning, actually, and that's how that kind of came about. But obviously, it's really well integrated with family support too, because in my own experience, I have a high schooler and a middle schooler at home, and their questions and their experiences as they come into adulthood are challenging to say the least, right? Like there's so much eye rolling and scowling in my house, and there's so many hormones. So there's a need to support our families and our parents as they are raising their children and have these big questions, and they bring them home from school or something they've seen on social media and things like that too. So I've been talking a lot with a lot of parish leaders, with the seminarians a few weeks ago too, about how important it is that we're really teaching from the beginning, especially at key life phases, about the gift of human sexuality and how it's part of nurturing the whole person, and how important it is that we learn to care for the whole person, that we understand how our growth and development works, and then what does it mean to have an experience of desire or attraction? Is that always a bad thing? No, of course not, right? And what does it mean to have true, authentic relationships with people, and how do we live that out as Christians and as missionary disciples? So key life phases, talking to our kids as young as they are able to talk about respecting people's boundaries and respecting their boundaries too. And then in middle school and high school, talking to them about what they're experiencing, and then into adulthood, like way remote marriage preparation. So like young adults who are not even dating, talking to them. They all know the word chastity, but do they really know, do they really understand that what we're talking about is rightly ordered love? Like, is your love ordered properly? And if you've experienced the Lord's love in your life, then you know how wonderful and restorative it can be. And is the love you're giving the people in your life the same? Are you trying to model that after the experience of the Lord's love in your own life? So we're working on some cool things. It's going to be awesome. But my biggest tip, like the seminarians were all asking this, they were like, how do we do this? Like, how do we even start this, right? Like when I get into a parish, I want this to be a thing. And you can't do it if you don't have your staff and your ministers who are already on fire about it and who have already experienced it personally. So that's my number one encourager for these next 5-10 years. We'll see how long it takes me is form your people, right? Like bring them in and talk to them about things like the 4 loves. That's a great topic. People love talking about the 4 loves. Bring them in and talk about theology of the body, read a great book together as a staff and do a book study on it and pray about it. And bring in a cool speaker. I'm sure Father Steve would love to talk about it.
If you can't find a cool speaker.
But, form your staff first, because if we can renew them in their love for this and renew their fire for wanting to preach the full truth of like your whole body is a gift, and everything you do to care for yourself and for your family in this way is a gift to the church too, then that's going to kind of spark something in them and be more open to other things that we as the Archdiocese can offer you, but we can't bring it to you if your people aren't ready to teach it or aren't ready to implement it, right?
I've been reading a lot of things that people have been saying in the church lately about how in our postmodern world, people are no longer asking if the Catholic Church is true or the teachings of the church are true. People aren't asking that because relativism, your truth, my truth, it's not relevant. But all of our apologetics are set up to argue for the truth. Right. Right. But like people have left the room and we're still there talking about it. Not that we don't need the work. It's important, right? We need that. But that people are asking now, is it good?
Yeah.
Is it good?
And does it
are
make
the
me
teachings
feel
of the
good?
church good?
Right.
Yeah.
Does it make me feel good
right now?
Yes.
Too. And so I love the idea of just the integrated and the ordered, are all of your loves ordered? I think that's just so profound. Yeah. The church has so much wisdom to offer on this topic, but it is difficult. It can be difficult for people to hear. There's so many bridges of trust that are not there. And then it can kind of shut down the conversation or prevent it from even getting started. So
yeah, absolutely. And like to go back to our 2002 time machine for a second, you guys.
You
guys remember the WWJD bracelets?
Yeah.
Like, are we even asking that question anymore in the church? Sometimes I wonder if we are. And so my kids, like, they eye roll when I do it, right? They're like, oh, I got this problem. And I'm like, okay, well, seriously, what would Jesus do? And they're like, Mom, you always ask that. And I'm like, but that's the question. That has to be the first question. Are you really doing this the way you know the Lord would want you to do it? Like, are you really modeling this after what you know he was doing when he was here? Like, walking the earth, right?
Right.
So we're not asking it anymore.
Oof.
Seriously consider giving all my kids a WWJD bracelet for birthdays or Christmas or something.
Yeah.
I might still. We'll have to see.
Oh man.
Well, Nicole, we're really grateful you took some time to be with us, and prayers for your ministry, your balance in 2022 and going forward. For you personally, that one of the things Beth has been harping on, and I think she's right, is one of the graces of bringing people in to talk with them is also to thank them.
Yeah,
for
we
the
want to
work they're
thank
doing.
you. Thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for bringing this goodness and these teachings and kind of this holistic perspective at the Archdiocesan level, and even just today and in your family life.
Yeah.
It's making an impact.
Thank you so
you.
much. Thank you. That's so affirming to me. Thank you.
Yeah. This has been the Encounter Grow Witness podcast. This is a podcast by and for those who work in ministry, supporting each other to grow in our relationship with Christ and the church, to enable us to be better witnesses of his love in the world. Let's be better fishers of men together. Don't forget to like and subscribe to this monthly podcast on Apple, Spotify, Google, or wherever you get your podcasts.